Now that we have built our terrain, we need to add textures to make it look beautiful. We're going to use the Unity standard assets to get us started on this. You may be able to go up to Assets, Import Package, and see a list of the standard assets here. I don't have it showing because I didn't have it downloaded when I installed Unity. If you do have that, the package you want to import is environment, and eventually we'll also import characters. If you don't have it showing, the way you can get the standard assets is by going to the Asset Store. If you don't have that tab showing, you can get there by pressing Control 9, which will open that window. I'm going to do a search for standard assets. And I have 2070 results, but the one I want is the very first one there. It's free, it's from Unity Technologies, and if I click on standard assets, I can see a description of it there. You may have a download button. If you have never downloaded it before, you can click on that to download it. I have downloaded it previously, so now I can just click import. You can see it's got a whole lot of there. I could choose certain things I want to import and not import. I do want to take everything though. I'm going to make sure everything is selected and click import. After the import finishes, if you go into the assets folder, you should now see a standard assets. Scroll down a little bit so I can see those in list view. I also think this sample scenes folder was created as well, which we can probably delete. I'm going to leave it for now. I'm going to go into the standard assets to look at it. You can see we have all kinds of things in here that Unity just provides to us. The only one we're concerned about at this moment is environment. You can see it's got trees, it's got some water, it's got terrain assets, which is what we're working with, and they have surface textures, which is what we're going to be focused on. So these are the textures they provide you. They're not the only textures you can use, but that's what we're going to start with. So if I go back to my scene view, and I want to start adding these textures onto my terrain, I'm going to click on the terrain and come over to this icon right here, the paint texture icon. So again, we get a brush where we can paint our texture on, but we need to choose the texture first. We can do that right here under Edit Textures. If I click on that and say Add Texture, I can choose which textures I want to add to my terrain. I'm going to drag in the Cliff Albedo Specular, which I'll probably use for my mountains. And you can see that that added that texture on the entire world. So the first one you put on is going to be your base texture. I'm going to say Edit Textures again to add more textures. Drag it into that spot and say Add. If this ever changes over here on you, just click back on Terrain, back on the paint icon. I'm going to keep adding these textures. Now that I've added the textures that I think I'm going to use, I'm going to start painting with them. I select the texture that I want to paint with. I'm going to use the sand first. Use whichever brush you want. I'm going to use this one. And you just start painting. So this is my beachy area over here. And maybe the base of the ocean will be sand. I'll switch to the grass and just keep painting. I can, of course, press F when I'm in here to zoom to a certain spot. If your brush feels too large, you can change the brush size right down here, so you can get a little more specific on where you're hitting. I'll use this kind of darker, muddier color for the lake area. You can also get textures online. So let's say I wanted to have a path coming through here somewhere, and I wanted some different texture for that. I could, of course, get textures from the asset store, but you can also just find textures through the internet. I'm going to do a search for seamless texture dirt. So seamless means that when they're tiled together, the images are repeated over and over and over. You won't be able to see a seam between the pictures. They blend together perfectly. If I go to images, and I just want to pick one that looks like my dirt path. So I guess I'll take this one. I'm just going to right click on it, save image as. I'm going to save this where it needs to go so it shows up in my project. I'm going to My Game, Assets. I already created a folder called Textures. If you don't have that, I would create one now. I'm just going to call this Dirt with the same file extension, .jpg. Now if I go back to Unity, it's not showing in this location because that's not where I saved it. These were the textures that came with the Unity standard assets. For my own personal textures that I add to my project, I want to save those inside my assets folder. And we put them inside of textures to keep it organized. So there's the texture. If I go back to my terrain object, edit textures, add another texture, I should be able to drag that right in there and say add. So now I've got my new texture there that I could use. If I want to see my world through my camera, I can click on the camera and I can see it right there. The camera is kind of underneath the terrain right now, so we can move that around if we'd like. And rotate it. And when I press play, I can see my world that I've created through my camera. Currently the scene is not saved because it has that asterisk. If I press Ctrl S, now the scene is saved. Next we'll be adding trees and water.